Guys, it is going down this weekend at UFC 292 as Sterling defends his belt against Sugar Sean O'Malley. And my partners at DraftKings are offering an incredible deal for all new customers who sign up using my promo code Sonnen. New customers can bet just $5 on any of this weekend's fights and receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. You can even use your bonus bets on DraftKings same fight parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds and method of victory. Remember, DraftKings is the only place where you can bet same fight parlays. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. So click on the link below and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Aljo 145. Guys, I feel like this is the story of the week, and I feel as though it's being missed. I mean, this is really tremendous. Let's think of this from Sugar Sean's perspective, right? And when we go into this fight, if we're talking about Sean or we're talking about Aljo, that athlete is either going to win or they're not going to win. I mean, do we all understand that? Like, there's not a whole bunch of options. They're going to either win, in which case we can guess where they go, or they're not going to win, in which case we can guess where they go. And however this outcome, it appears that both of them will be fighting for a title next. How do I get there? Well, if you're in Aljo's spot, okay, and you get beat, it would seem to me, when the rankings come out at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, you are now the number one contender. You would go from champion down a spot to the number one contender, and you switch with the guy that beat you. Now, could you build enough interest from the masses to get a rematch? Number one guy doesn't always fight for the belt, but let's say we're going to show a respect to the rankings that we keep for the reason of respecting them. It would seem as though Aljo's next fight would be for the title. It would be a rematch. Now, even if he were to then walk away and leave the division, it would look like at 145 that Aljo would be a very good option for two choices. Either a title fight with Volkanovski, and if that's unlikely and Volk is doing something else, an interim championship with what I believe would be Ilia Topuria. That's what I think. Does anybody disagree? Does anybody see that any different? That's what the loss. If Sugar Sean is to have a loss, Aljo has told us he's leaving the division and going up to 145, which means you need to fight for the vacant belt. And it would seem as though if Sean, who's ranked number one, loses to the champion ranked in front of him, no matter how that loss goes, that could be a knockdown dragout, that could be a 5-second finish. It would seem as though he would maintain his spot. Aljo leaves. Sean's number one contender. Who do we got that's 2 or 3? Somewhere right in there. Maybe look for some parity, a little politics play in. You put him out there for the vacated title. Now, that's probably the best case scenario. I get that things don't totally play out like that, but it's a really big deal that Aljo's leaving. And by the way, he's leaving. He's leaving, and I'm telling you that, and I'm telling you that in a different tone, because if you followed Aljo's career, particularly maybe the last year would be a good example, you've heard him say this going into fights, but he has not changed his mind. There has been things that have happened that have forced him into that weight. When he settled business with Peter Yan, when he corrected that story and proved that he was the champion, great, I'm out of here. That was my plan. Well, now you got Henry coming back. It's hard to walk when you didn't deal with the champion who never lost his championship. That's just a reality, and it's only come up a handful of times in our sport. But Aljo's going to have to go and do this. And as a wrestler, I can assure you, Aljo had a tremendous anxiety, for lack of a better word, to go in there with Henry. He was challenging himself. He was testing himself. He needed to prove certain things to himself, and it's not the first time he's done that. And he went and grabbed defending national champion out of Penn State Roman Bravo Young, and did a match on the side that a number of you probably don't know about. And it went exactly like you would think for a former wrestler versus the current champion. Right? He didn't care. He knew that going in, what it was about. He knew things that were a problem for his style. And instead of running from those things, he ran to them. And I want to make sure that you do understand that about Aljo. Aljo is a competitor, has as much integrity as any competitor that we've seen. He does not duck competition. Now, when he gets done with Henry, right, that's the big one. So wrestler against the greatest wrestler, by the way, was a little bit in front of you, which means you looked up to him, and now you got to deal with that. You got to switch that in your mind. You got to convince yourself of certain things. He's out. He's out the door, right? Well, no, he doesn't even get out of the ring, and Sugar Sean's in it, face to face with a crowd popping for Sean. Sterling's the one that just beat the Olympic champion. Sterling just beat the 2-division champion. The crowd's popping for Sean. Oh, by the way, they announced the fight that night. Wait, how do you leave? But I'm right. How do you leave? If you have that competitive integrity, and he does, how do you leave? And I would wonder, by the way, if psychologically that was all planned out. I don't think that it was. I think it was happenstance, but I'll share for you. You want to get a fight, you want to make a fight happen that you don't think you're going to get, bring the guy in, face him off in front of the world, and make the announcement that night, right? There's no time. You got to make phone calls, you got to get back home and talk with your family. Like, you got to do this whole process to drop a belt and walk away. Drop a belt and move up. Keep a belt. See if you can get champ opportunity, right? It's a process. You don't have any time to make that process. He didn't have time to call a guy like me that he could trust and go, hey, here's the news, get it out for him. He didn't have any time to do any of that. They brought the guy in the ring. He didn't even get to leave the ring. He didn't even get to put a shirt on. All right, he's got to go do this. Now, he said something, though, today, and I just want you to hear it. He said, I'm leaving. If I win, I am leaving. But he went further, and this was the line. This is where it's, okay, he's not, this is happening. He said it's Merab's time. And that speaks to a deal. That speaks to two friends who had give and take for each other that have a bond. And one of them said, let me handle this, and I'll go, and it'll be yours. And this is very close to Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez, by the way. Very, very close. Well, why would I say close? This is the exact same thing that happened with Daniel Cormier and Cain Velasquez, right? So, I like it, by the way. I think it's fun. The question that I have, right, if I get Dana in front of me, the question that I have, and he wouldn't answer it today, by the way. You know, Dana won't answer things until they happen. He won't deal with the problem until it's actually here, because things change so fast. But I would just love to know if Aljo does get a win and he moves up to 145, right? Like, as great as Aljo's done and as bright as that star is, not just now, but over the history of the 135-pound division. I mean, you had some greats in there, man. You got Garbrandt, you got Dillashaw. That's the division of Cruz himself. I know people say who the great it is, but come on. Take your eye off Dominic Cruz. You're just being a jerk. You just didn't follow sport. And I'll share with you with a win, and particularly the guys that he beat. You could make an easy argument that he's the greatest ever, and I only share that with you within the division. If he moves up to 145 pounds, I mean, does he have to even be the greatest ever? If he's just a champion for one night and he moves up to 145 pounds. Doesn't he fight for the title? I mean, isn't that very realistic? Could we really see him in a number one contenders match? Because you also have card placement issues, right? He has proven he is a main event pay-per-view. He was main event pay-per-view last time. They rebooked him that night. They used him as a main event pay-per-view. If with a win, he's going to return to a main event of pay-per-view. Do you think it's realistic that he has a number one contenders match there? Like, could you picture Max and Sterling fighting And it's a number one contenders match, just by example. Or would it be more realistic that Sterling comes up, Ilia Topuria gets in his wheelhouse, and off we go? And I will be curious how Sterling plays this. He has said he's coming to 145. What he has never said is champ. He's made it pretty clear he's going to leave that belt. Very clear. He's made it very clear. When he goes, he's burning his ships. But he's never said the name Volkanovski. And I can't say he hasn't said it because from a competitive standpoint, he doesn't want to do it. It appears that Volkanovski is now an unannounced 55-pounder. Like, I wouldn't blame Sterling for not saying his name. But it would change things if he did. It would put a ball back in Volkanovski's court. I don't believe that Volkanovski's walking out of 145 for any reason other than he's looking for not only competition, but new competition. Right?